for the archive. Andy and I really don't have an agenda tonight. I am going to share my screen just so we can walk through some things. We just want to hear from you what you think you don't even think you know, what you think you do know, what you need help with. Let me got a couple more people coming in. So March 18th is the conference day. We did put out an orientation video that should help you with some of the ins and outs. It's out on the regional website. That parking map's out there. Registration is open until the 4th. I do want to just show you what that system looks like. So in case you haven't started registering. So I created a fake school. Yours is going to look a little bit different because I created a fake school. But what you'll do when you log in, it should automatically have you as the chapter advisor. So that's what that CA stands for. And then on your side, it looks a bit different, but you're going to add students. And then yours, if you just click the search button, it's going to show every kid you put in the national system. Mine, because it's a fake school, there are no kids in the national system. So let's say this kid just for, what am I doing wrong? Might not let me fake it. I think it knows that I'm. That's weird. Okay, well, I can't show you that. That's not good, but. Yeah, and I can't log. I was going to log into another school, but I don't want to show student names on a recording. Anyway, when you get in, like if you log in, it will look similar to what you saw on your screen. You'll add students. Once you're done with that, then you can add their events. And Andy and I went over that in the orientation video. Keep in mind, if you're doing events that are team-based, all your Tech Bowl kids that are on the same team need to be team 1. If you have a second team, they're going to be team 2 when you register those students. And then there is no cost. We've talked about that before, but the regional registration doesn't have a cost to it. Another thing I'll show you real quick, and then we'll just I'll shut up and let you ask questions. When you log into the national website, so if you go out to, let me start at the very basics, because we've had a couple schools asking about this. Out on tsaweb.org, go to login. You already have a login. Once you log in, yours will look a little bit different, but Total TSA is where all the event guides are located. So if you go to competition/high school, you've got 2 different ways to download. This one is a full PDF. Andy, what, 300 plus pages, 400 plus pages?
468.
Not that you look at it a lot, but. So this guide's nice. I always, as a teacher, this was on back in the day, it was on their desktop of every computer in my lab. Now, you could throw that in Google Classroom or Google Drive and your kids could have access to it. But let me show you. So it has a table of contents built into it. And some of this is going to be handy, even though it's not directly related to competitions, but it does have, like if your school is looking for standards alignment, it has NGSS alignment, which is what we call our science, or what Kentucky uses, but they're not called NGSS. And then it has standards for engineering and technological literacy, computer science standards. And then it is aligned to some math standards, although it's not Common Core. But anyway, all the event guides are in this one document if you want to do it that way. It is kind of overwhelming. Andy, you're way off. It's only 354 pages.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, every event guide's in here, and then the rubrics so your kids know how they're going to be judged. You can also download it by a zip file, and what that's going to give you is each event will pop out in its own PDF. So if you have a kid that's interested at state, let's say in fashion design, they'll have what you see on my screen now. So every event guide will be in its own PDF, and that's a little bit less overwhelming for you. If you're just trying to figure out tech problem solving, you can go and just open up that one event guide rather than the 354-page document. Any questions so far?
Mark, I have two kids. They registered late. That's what Elizabeth said, and she hasn't gotten any approval from your end, it seems.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a manual process, which is a pain, but if you register kids in the national site,
Okay.
I have to manually pull them into the regional site. So let me.
Okay.
So they should, if they don't show up after I do this, let me know. But
okay.
Nope, that's not even the right conference. Sorry. Yeah, so that should pull everybody that's currently in the national database over into our regional database.
Okay.
Yeah, and if that happens, if one of you tomorrow or Monday of next week, you're like, oh man, I forgot to put in a kid. If you throw them in the national system, just email me and I'll pull them into the regional system so you can register them for
sure.
conference. So another thing I wanted to cover, and I'm going to let Andy talk about this too, but are our high school entry limits and notes, any notes that we have, because the national conference builds most of the event guides and rubrics, and that's built for their 4-day national conference. So the fact that we host an entire conference and you could argue less than a day, some of these events we have to abbreviate and make them shorter, so we cut certain things out of it to save time. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood this document. And Andy, do you want to kind of just go over how this document works so they understand?
Well, and the other part is under eligibility in the total TSA guide, it may say only 2 teams per state, but we have. Oh, you covered it up.
Yeah, well, I was going to show them an event guide so they know exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, so dragster, for example, 2 individuals per chapter. That means that your chapter could send 2 dragsters to nationals, is what that means. So ignore eligibility in the event guide unless you're ready to go to the national conference in Dallas.
So we have our columns where it says minimum and maximum entries. So for instance, and I can't see because it's so small, dragsters there, we have minimum entry of 1 and a maximum of 4. I believe it's 5. So you can actually have up to 5 dragsters per chapter for the region. And it may be in its similar limit if you look at the event matrix for the state conference as well. And then any changes that we make to the total TSA guide will be in the event notes. For instance, whether documentation is submitted online for like board game design, the portfolio is going to be presented rather than being printed out and put in a clear front portfolio. It's going to be turned in online, and Mark provides that link to where it's submitted in a multi-page PDF, and then it says the board game will be presented on site. So they will actually bring the game and the pieces and so forth in the box that they're required to have and place it on and present that at the regional conference.
Yeah, so a lot of this, like Tech Bowl, we don't have time to give the test and do the quick recall, so we're just doing
everybody's
no
going to do
test.
Quick recall. Right. Yep.
Mark, for the engineering design, you need 3 is the minimum requirement, is right? Entry?
3 students, 3 to 6 students on the team is what that means. And you're allowed to send 4 teams to regional if you wanted to.
Okay.
Yep. So if it's a team event, that's a good question. Like on-demand video has to have at least 2 members, and it can have up to 6 members. Whereas photographic tech is an individual competition, so you can send one student
Yep.
all the way up to 4 students for that one event, but they're going to compete individually.
See, it means team is 3, is it? Or a team can have 2 students for that engineering design
3 to 6 students on a team.
on a team. Okay.
Yep. And you can send up to 4 different teams to compete if you wanted to. And one team may have 4 kids, one may have 5, one may have 3.
Mhm.
And then some events are individual or team. So if you have a kid that's interested in digital video production, they could do it by themselves, or they could do it on a team up to 6 kids.
And children's stories is that way as well.
Yep. Yeah. And then down here at the bottom, some of these events have to have, like Tech Bowl has to have 3 kids on the team.
Okay.
Problem solving has to have a team of 2, and drones is a team of 2 as well. Structural design, that structure is you're gonna pre-build that at school
Yes.
and brought to the conference. Maybe I need to fix my grammar there. And then let me show you, if you haven't seen, so this is key. If you're doing structures, out on the national website, make sure you scroll all the way down to high school, skip over middle school, because if you click on structures for middle school, you're going to build the wrong truss.
Structure.
So this tells you exactly what you're building. You're building a trestle bridge, and here's your size, 16 inches wide, 8 inches tall. And then it gets a little bit wonky because the judge is actually going to randomly pick out a number how far the span is going to be offset from each side of the structure.
Is
And
it from
that's
the
just-
center or is from the end? That 2 inches, 1 inches.
The span is 13 inches. The total length of your bridge is 16 inches.
No, the weight that they're going to the load. He said it's from 2 inches or 1 inches they will pick, or 0 inches.
It would be
Is it from the center?
offset. Yeah, it'll be offset from center.
Yeah,
Center.
right here.
Okay.
Yep. So it's going to be from center. It can be anywhere from 0 inches off center to 2 inches off center.
Okay.
So basically, your students need to make sure that the test rod, it's going to be a piece of all thread, probably what 3/8 of an inch thick,
3/8.
Andy, maybe a
Yep.
1/4 inch.
Uh-huh.
That
Pretty
needs
sure
to
it's a
pass anywhere in basically the middle of the structure needs to be wide open,
Yes.
2 inches off center each side. Otherwise, if they can't fit it through, depending on where they randomly draw, it's going to be DQ'd. And then the students should have a drawing that could be hand drawn or computer generated.
Okay.
And then they're supposed to have it in a box too, just so it's nice and safe. If your students want to do this event, this just gives you an idea of the box. If your students want to do this event at state, they actually bring a pre-built one. We test all of those, and then the top 20, I think, structures, the top 20 teams are then handed a bunch of basswood, and they have to build another one on site, and then we dry them for 24 hours, and then we break those for the top 3 winners. So it's actually bring a structure and then on site as well. So it's a pretty involved competition at state.
So that is a state, isn't it? But
Yep.
for the
Yeah,
region, it's only
yeah.
one you need.
Yes.
Regional is pre-built only. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that's documented on that. Yeah, this page we're talking about, structures pre-built at school. Tech problem solving. If you're thinking about events and if your kid's a little bit, or if you're a little bit overwhelmed, tech problem solving is just, I always told my students it was a MacGyver event until kids didn't know who MacGyver was, and it just made me feel old. But basically, we're going to hand them a bunch of stuff. They need to bring some tools with them, and then they have to build something. If you teach Project Lead the Way IED, it's like an instant challenge. So random materials, they have 2 hours to build and design and solve a problem, and then we'll test those to see who were the top 3. So that's just kind of a fun event. If you're looking for something to put kids in, you can put 2 teams in that event. CAD, if you're teaching any sort of CAD, they just walk in with a laptop. You can send up to 4 students for that. It's an individual competition. So they could come in with Onshape or Inventor, whatever software you're using. We hand them a prompt. They have 2 hours to replicate it in the software, and then the judges judge that as well. So I'm just trying to think of events that they don't take you a lot of upfront prep, because I know some of this is overwhelming.
Mark, let me cover the toolbox for,
Yeah.
And it's the same, basically the same toolbox for structures at state as well. And so problem solving and structural require toolbox. In the total TSA guide, there's a list of suggested items that can be in that toolbox. Pretty much, it's as most things, it's general, cutting devices, everything works as long as it's not electrical. It can't be battery operated. It can't be plug-in. X-Acto knives or whatever kind of scissors, any kind of cutting device that you think you might use, because you're going to have from string to straws to foam to paper to note cards, card stock. You never know what you're going to have to cut. So a balsa wood, basswood, you never know. So you have to have any kind of cutting devices. Adhesives. Most people use CA glue, but I've seen people use, regular Elmer's glue or fast setting Elmer's glue, that type of thing. There are different, any kind of temporary holding devices. It can be anywhere from clamps to clothespins, binder clips, anything you want to use that might be used to hold things together while you're constructing. They can't. And also it'll tell you there in the rules that none of the tools may be used as part of the solution. They can only be used in the construction. But once it's constructed, then those things cannot be on there. Straight pins, all types of things like that. Tape can be used as a hold down device like duct tape, electrical tape, but duct tape and electrical tape, while they're handy to have in your toolkit, cannot be part of the solution. Always keep masking tape in your toolkit, because masking tape often is part that can be used and be part of the final solution, used as an adhesive or fastening device and part of the solution. So keep masking tape, even if you have the other tapes for hold down devices. Keep a roll of masking tape in your toolkit. So any kind, you never know. It has wrenches and pliers, and if you had a multi-tool of some kind, it'll probably cover it. I can't ever remember when nut drivers were needed, but they're there just in case you want to have a complete toolbox, because you never know. So that is important. So
yeah, most importantly, they do have to wear safety glasses.
Yep.
During the entire build. Safety
glasses, and typically some kind of piece of foam board maybe that fits in the bottom of the toolbox that you can use as a cutting surface, or a small piece of 1/4-inch plywood that you can use as a cutting surface. So when we're at conference sites, we don't mar up the tables of wherever we're meeting. Wax paper sometimes is a good thing to have, just so you don't glue anything down to your cutting surface or the table or anything like that. Never hurts to have some debonder. If you don't have any debonder, fingernail polish remover usually works as a debonder for CA glue pretty well. Because if you don't, somebody will glue their fingers together. Never fails.
Yeah, one other thing I'll mention, I was out there earlier on the themes and problems website. So make sure you're looking at these themes and problems, like children's stories is a good example. So make sure if you have children's stories being constructed or designed, to make sure it does meet the theme, because that's one of the things the judges will look for, is how do they interpret the theme for that competition.
Hey, specifically on the children's stories, sorry.
Yeah.
On the children's stories, I saw something that said that you have, okay, so it includes an activity, but then I clicked on something else and it said it doesn't, like it never mentioned it. Like on this part, it doesn't mention that you need an activity. So you do need an activity with it, correct?
Correct. That's part of the theme and the problem.
Gotcha.
Yep. Yeah, the theme and problem change every year, but these guides change every 2 years. So they try to write the guides generic enough But yeah,
One
it
different-
will be part of the, the go, no go. And if you haven't noticed on the rubrics, this is the most important box on the rubric. If a kid shows up to children's stories and doesn't have a portfolio, they're automatically disqualified. So we don't even judge. They're not going to win top 3. It's kind of a waste of the judge's time. So no matter what event you're doing, problem solving is going to be the same way. If a kid shows up to problem solving, doesn't have safety glasses, doesn't have a toolbox, the judge is just going to mark them entry not evaluated and ask them to leave the room.
One exception to the theme and problem rule for last year and this year anyway is dragsters. The theme is actually in the Total TSA guide. And I think we've warned everybody several times about that one, because this year you cannot have a shell car. All the wheels the theme is that all wheels have to be outside the body of the car.
Yep. So it's right here on the second page of that document. This is another confusing part that some of you have asked about. Which do I follow? 2022 is when the national conference for this year occurs. So that's why you're following anything that says 2022 in the national document. So all 4 wheels must be exposed. And if you've never done dragster, what they're making sure you do not do this year is build a shell car. They try to keep everything a little bit, they don't want kids showing up year after year with the same dragster, so they change things enough. But if you've ever seen a car where you use on a mill or a router, you can shell out the inside of it and hide the wheels on the inside. Also, if you have kids doing this, graphite is their friend, so make sure they're lubing up their axles. You can buy axle bearings. Some schools use spacers. But this is more or less what a car might look like this year. So we're talking about wheels have to be on the outside of the car. And on our regional website, if you scroll down, we basically took the event guide and just condensed all the rules for it's Andy's phone. Don't be alarmed. It's not an invasion.
Forgot to turn the ringer off.
So we took all the rules from that dragster event guide and just put them on. This is what the judges use at our events. So if the body is anywhere outside of 280 to 290 millimeters, it's DQ'd. If the body height with the wheels is over 75 millimeters, it's DQ'd. And once we find something that's out of spec, we stop judging that car. So your kids need to use this document. When I was a teacher, I spec cars before we ever brought them to regional or state. You could have each other's spec car, like have a kid spec their neighbor's car. But it's always a shame when these kids show up, the paint job's amazing, everything's perfect, and then the chamber where the CO2 cartridge is out of spec, and then we can't even race it. Because a lot of these, if they're out of spec, it's going to be a safety issue. It could fly off the track, it could break, it could hurt somebody that's watching. So we don't race any car that doesn't meet all these specs. And if you're buying Pitsco kits, so I don't know I don't know how many people are actually doing dragster, but do not assume when your kids get one of these Pitsco kits in that everything is in spec. I've seen some that the power plant hole in the back is drilled too deep. I've seen some where it's not drilled deep enough. So if you're buying these little pre-made kits or these pre-made blanks from Pitsco or another company, you still need to spec them and make sure, because it happened at last Friday. We were pre-specking dragsters for EKU's regional, and one of them, the power plant hole wasn't drilled in deep enough, and so we DQ'd the car. And the teacher was there, and they're like, "That's what we got from Pitsco," but they're zipping these out as quick as they can. These fusion dragsters are legal, and it's you can buy fusion material, which is is it a polymer or a composite? It's not wood. It's something that they've come out with now because basswood and balsa wood are becoming harder and harder to come by. But you can buy basswood or balsa wood or that fusion material. Just keep in mind on that spec sheet, the big one you need to worry about is the car has to weigh at least 80 grams. So if your kids are working with balsa wood, they may have to put 5 coats of paint on it to make that spec, or they may have to use an extra heavy steel axle instead of an aluminum axle to meet that spec. So most schools are using basswood or fusion this year because of that specification.
Yeah, and that specification was made because balsa wood was becoming a problem. China is making their wind turbine blades out of balsa wood, and they have cornered the market, and it is next to impossible to supply. And if you get it, it's a lot more expensive than it was a year or two ago.
Yep.
And basswood is heavier and considerably more dense. So what questions do you all have?
I have one question. I have a bunch of kids, and I don't know how the other schools are doing it, but I know I'm not starting with like a bunch of different competitions. I think I've got only like 8 to 10 that they're actually competing in, and that may be even too much. I'm not sure. But I've got a bunch of kids that are gonna like do the competitions that day, like the technology design competition. Is there any way to prepare kids for like the prepared presentation stuff or the like the CAD engineering stuff? Is there any way for me to prep these kids? Because they're like chomping at the bit to try and do something, but I don't know. I don't have any resources to give them.
Yep.
Google
so
Classroom.
yeah, in our Google Classroom, let me get to it here in a second.
Check this one.
The Kentucky TSA Advisor Google Classroom, yours is going to look a little bit different because I'm the teacher, but if you go to classwork and go to past prompts, these over the last, 1, 2, 3, 4,
3 years.
5 years, this is all the material that we used at state conference. So if I pull up these are called CRAM, which stands for Curriculum Resource Assessment Materials. But in here, let me skip over middle school real quick. If you have kids that want to practice CAD, middle school, there we go. So this was the prompt last year during our virtual conference. So architecture, if you want to do that at state, this is what the prompt was. They were given this drawing, and at state they have 4 hours for CAD. At regional they'll only have 2 hours. This is the high school engineering prompt. So if you have kids that just want to practice, give them a 2-hour window, or just say, hey, you've got tonight at home, bring back what you did and I'll grade it. You could judge it yourself. This one actually had multiple parts during that 4-hour window. So they had, and then it even has the answer key, so you can use that to judge.
So regional is 2 hours, Mark?
Regionals is 2 hours, yep.
2 hours, okay.
For CAD, yep.
But at state, it will be 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Coding is in here, so if you have kids that are interested in coding at state, they can do some practice. Let me keep scrolling down. I want to show you a couple other things. On-demand video, if you want kids to prep. So that one, they basically, what do we do at state? We give them, I don't remember when we released the prompt, but the prompt will come out, I don't know, 48 hours before. Andy, do you remember?
No, I don't. You've got that in your calendar
Yeah.
to remind you to do it.
And I will email that prompt out.
Is it the CAD?
Yeah, so on-demand video will publish. So on March 7th, I will email you the prompt for if you have kids doing on-demand video, and then they basically have 48 hours to produce a video. So if your kids want to practice that between now and then this is just an example of what a prompt would look like. They have to create a 60-second video. In this case, they had to create a comedy. They had to have these 3 items in their video, and then they had to say a certain dialogue. And then the rest is up to them how they do that. Of course, following the event guide as well to make sure they're not DQ'd. Here's prepared presentation topics. So that one, the kids get 24 hours to prep. And so once again, we'll release. We're not doing it. We're not doing that. It's regional, right?
No, I think we got extent, maybe.
I don't see it on that list. Another one in here that you probably want to look at is, this is the last year's Tech Bowl exam. So it's state, not at regional, no test at regional, but at state, the kids will come in. Actually, we're going to do it online. So about the week before, they're going to take a test, and then that'll help us determine who actually comes for quick recall. So if they want to practice a test, they can do that. I will tell you that one way to be very good at Tech Bowl is your kids that are doing Tech Bowl are probably Governor's Cup kids anyway. You know, these are quick recall kids that do this for a living. The thing that always hangs up a lot of kids are TSA facts. So you may see a question, when was the national office chartered? What's the TSA motto? What's the TSA theme? Those are the questions that kids get hung up on. Like here, in every round of quick recall, there's going to be questions. So what event do students build solar power cards? There's just going to be general TSA knowledge in there that really helps students separate themselves. But this is just what the questions from last year. So you can drill your kids, you can have them practice, practice that with each other. And then finally, there's going to be a tech problem solving prompt from last year too. So last year, virtual, the kids had to have these materials, and then this is what they had to do last year. And actually, we didn't do this one last year just because it was a little bit hard. We did our own prompt, but this is just a good example of what those tech problem solving prompts are going to look like. So give your kids 10 popsicle sticks, drinking straws, note cards, and say, hey, you got 2 hours to do whatever this prompt says to do.
Mark, we've got a question, and Brian's asked us a question. How many competitions can students participate in a region?
Good question. Let me. I did it again. I clicked on the wrong conference. We got too many conferences going on. Okay. We have it currently set up for, and if this group wants to change this, we can definitely do that. It's not a big deal. But right now, students can do 4 competitions, which is honestly a lot in a day, unless they're doing some events that are only pre-submission. There's no way they can do 4 on-site events in a day.
Yeah.
We do allow, like, if you do have kids that want to do CAD and Tech Bowl, they can come to CAD, start designing, but we will not stop the clock for them. So they still get the same 2-hour window. So if you do have kids that want to do some events that overlap, they could do that. Like some events that wouldn't work very well on, like tech problem solving. If you leave your partner high and dry for 20 minutes, that's a pretty long time to not have a partner help you design something. But other events, and it happens at state too. Kids will run around for multiple events at the same time. But you could definitely do, thinking about online only submissions. You could do digital video, and then a kid could show up and do CAD on site and Dragster, because Dragster, you literally drop your car off. If you don't see it race down the track, it doesn't hurt you. It's just you don't get to see it race. So there are some events like that. Testing for structure, you don't have to be there to watch that. So if you wanted to build a structure, but then you wanted to go and do Tech Bowl, that wouldn't be a big conflict of time. So yeah, Brian, to answer your question, they can sign up for 4 events. On-demand video is online only, so that's something they could do in addition to on-site or 2 on-site competitions. And we tried to space them out where these events in the morning are going to take about 2 hours, then we'll break for lunch, and then these events in the afternoon take about 2 hours. So I would kind of look at picking a morning competition and then an afternoon, or one or the other. But I don't know that I'd try to do too many in the morning and too many in the afternoon. Photo tech, these kids will show up at the lobby at the registration desk. They're going to pick up a prompt, and then they have 2 hours to go around the conference taking pictures, and then they bring those pictures back on a flash drive and submit those for their project. And then, yeah, I think the rest of and I misspoke about digital video a little bit, sorry. They submit their video online and their documentation, but then they actually have to come and get interviewed. But these 2 events, like engineering design, digital video, those are going to be, and children's stories, 5 to 7 minutes tops. They're going to be tied up. So they'll show up at 12:30 to that competition, and that judge will say, hey, come back at 1:15 to present. And they'll come back and they'll present for 5 to 10 minutes, and then they'll be done. Same with board game design up here in the morning. That one's going to be the same thing. They'll show up, get a time, leave, come back whenever that time is. And
children's stories will take a little longer because they have to read their book to the judges.
That's true.
And then answer questions.
Yep, that is true. Sorry. Yeah, and if you haven't noticed, Andy and I struggle. I mean, and we have 30 plus competitions at the middle school level too, and they're all vastly different. So it's not just you. If you think this is confusing, we get confused on where to go and find information, just like you do. And I've been an advisor for 15 years probably. So it's frustrating, and we try to do the best we can with our websites, trying to put all the information in one place for you. You'll notice that when you start thinking about coming to state conference as well. We try to pull everything from the national office and host it here, so you can find like the rules, the competition info, the documentation, everything, the themes and problems. This takes you straight to the website for nationals. Any forms that you need, because the website for nationals, it's like some stuff's here and some stuff's here and some stuff's here, and it's frustrating. That's for sure.
The one thing you didn't mention, if anybody's competing in drones or unmanned aerial, that rule guide is in the Google Classroom and not in Total TSA because it's a Kentucky only event.
Yeah, and same for a couple events at state. Like if you have kids wanting to do PVC kayak, that's a state only competition. So if you come out in our Google Classroom and go to state only events, this is where we house our event guides. So the logistics competition, which was brand new, is in here. PVC kayak, social media, flight sim, drones. And the drone competition at regional, we only do the autonomous. So your kids, a week before competition, so whatever the week before the 18th is, the 12th, 11th, whenever, we're going to send you a prompt. So it'll look similar to this, but the obstacles will be in a different arrangement, and then those students have a week to practice and prep. The obstacles are always the same, so if you want to pre-build these, we just move them around in that arena. And
what program do they normally use to do the autonomous program for the drones?
Drone Blocks is what the vast majority of schools use. It's free and it works with Telos. So if you go out, actually it's just a Chrome extension. You can do it on your phone as well. The kids will probably want to do it on their phone or an iPad.
So it is compatible with Chromebooks?
Yep. And the kids will need a device with them, because I guarantee you the day they show up, one thing your kids will know, if they practice programming on tile and they show up and it's carpeted, that's going to throw off the vision sensor on those Telos. So they need to be, because they'll get 20 minutes in the arena when their time starts, and we'll give them 20 minutes and they can tweak things, fly, crash, tweak things, fly, crash. And then we just record their best attempt. So if they make it through 4 of the obstacles, then they get a certain score. If they make it through all of them, then it's based on time. So the kids will need to have a device, and there's an iPhone app, there's an Android app for drone blocks, and it's completely free.
Mark, spoke to Andy too about the engineering design. This year's prompt is for the urban infrastructure. So we are concentrating on urban areas, right?
Yep.
Not the rural
Yes.
one? Okay.
Yeah, so the theme for, and the national office, and Andy can elaborate on this, they make these themes vague for a reason, because they want kids to interpret it and explain to the judges why they interpreted it the way they did. So like digital video, a day in the life, self, school, family, etc. So what does that mean to a kid? You know, it's an artistic interpretation to digital video production. Yeah, restore and improve an urban infrastructure. You know, for some of your students, urban may be a little bit foreign to them, but you can talk about, you know, Louisville or Ashland or Pikeville, you know, talk about a city nearby and some issues they may be having, or Nashville, or something like that, for sure.
Yep. And make sure in the documentation where they have the portion of interpretation, that's where they draw out and show their thinking about why they chose that particular object thing to renovate, how they were going to do it, why they were going to do it, why is it important, provide research. And there's always the research.
Yeah, if you look at like the rubric for engineering design, they're going to have to identify the problem. This they're going to put into their own words. So that's going to pull out some of their interpretation. But then, you know, all the way down through this, all of this is going to be based on their interpretation. And then as well as their interview, that's really going to come out, how they articulate, how they interpreted that, and why they went the route that they went. The judges will see that pretty clearly, or not. And the not side of that will score poorly. And then they get points for their display and model. One thing and I may have pointed this out to you, but I think this is terrible how the national office has done this, but I wanted to make sure you see it. It's written up here, which nobody reads. But if you see here for display and model aesthetics, this row is worth ×1. So this row is worth 10 points. If the kids do okay, they get 8 points. If they do not very well, they're going to get 2 points. This row down here is worth 20 points. So if the kids if they do great, if the board looks amazing, if their prototype looks amazing, but it doesn't really have a great impact as far as the detail, the components, you know, describe all of their identification and the solution to the problem, this one's worth twice as many points as these two. So if they do great up here and they do terrible down here, that's going to hurt them a lot worse. So make sure you look for those ×1s. Andy claims that there's even ×3s on some events and ×4s for some. So
yep.
It's not very well. Yeah, I think that needs to be bold and like 5 times bigger, or they just need to put a heading where the score changes. But it is what it is. We can't modify these documents. They're locked with a password. Trust me, I've tried. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at rubrics.
Brian, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Brian asked, are there any regional competitions that require participation to compete at state? And no. Region competition basically is just get you in front of the judges, get you comfortable, get you a chance to get some feedback before state. But there are no region competitions or qualifiers for state.
Yeah,
you can
and that'll
do terrible
happen.
And come back and do it again. You don't even have to compete in it, and you can still go to state and compete.
Yep, that's true. So, and that'll happen this Friday at EKU. We had dragsters that we spec'd out last Friday, and some of them were DQ'd. Some of those same dragsters will end up showing up to state. They'll tweak them enough to get them within spec, and then we can race them. So if you have students that want to just come for the day and just see it and not compete in anything, but they want to walk in the room and see dragsters flying down the track, and they want to do structures just to watch it, that's a great thing too. So we just want as many of your students, especially for Stan and his money, to kind of see the impact that he's having in Eastern Kentucky. So if you have kids that just want to come, let me know and I can put them in the system manually. If they don't want to compete, just shoot me an email and I can add them, and we'll just print them a name tag so we know who they are and what school they belong to. The last thing I'll mention, and I don't really have anything else, but the lunch is provided. So we'll have pizza and drinks for everybody coming. There's no charge to that. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, Stan has given us some extra money, so we're buying some fun little TSA giveaways for all the students and you. Overall, I know it seems a little bit nerve-wracking and a little bit overwhelming, but we just want it to be a fun event. We want you to be able to walk around and see all these competitions going on, so you're like, oh, that's what digital video actually looks like, or this is what these kids are going to see. And that any limit on number of bystander students? No, I don't think so. Andy?
No.
Nope.
As long as you don't bring the whole school, Brian.
Yeah, Brian will show up in solar cars and
Yeah.
I'm going to change that right now before I forget. So I'm going to make it to where you can just do that yourself. Oh crap. Andy, where do I do that? Where do I make it to where kids can come but not compete?
It should be under setup. I can't see because the screen's too small.
It's not the screen, Andy. It's
Well, and I'm an old blind guy.
there it is. Now you're admitting it. Anyway, I'll find it. I can set up the system. Oh wait, I think I'm there. Yeah, so I can
What
make
about
it to where
suggested dress code for students for region?
business casual, so polo shirts, khakis, blouse, slacks. We want them to understand if they're working in an engineering firm, you can't show up in a tank top and shorts. We're not going to hold them to that, but we would appreciate if they show up in just kind of a business casual attire or a dress shirt, no ties unless some kids love that. They'll show up. We'll have kids at state that show up in full suits just because they think it's fun, or they wanted to kind of wow the judges. Okay, so I just changed it to where when you register students, you can choose to have them compete, but they don't have to. So, and I'll send an email out to everybody so they're aware of that. So you can register all your kids, and then some of them you can say are coming to compete, and some of them are just coming. And that way I can generate name tags, and we'll have a head count for pizza. So
Yeah.
don't email me, but rather do that yourself. Yeah, I know you're building 2 solar cars, Brian. Stan actually told me about it. The only other thing I just thought of was back in the Google Classroom. These high schooler exemplars, these are from last year's virtual. So rarely or never in the history of TSA have we done online submissions for pretty much every project. So if you go into our Google Classroom high school exemplars, if you want to see last year's first place board game portfolio, you can go and look at it. It's going to show you what that student turned in. And then you can also see the rubric. So you'll know, sure, they did really well, they won, but they also were a little bit deficient in X column or Y row. And you're going to get that for almost every event. We didn't host every single event last year,
and a few
even
the
here,
first place wasn't exemplar.
Yeah, that's true too. If we didn't think it, just because it won, it wasn't great quality, we didn't put that in here either. But here you'll see the CAD prompt that I've already shown you once before. And here is what the kids submitted that won. Was it perfect? Maybe not, but they beat everybody else. So use that. Also, if your kids are like, what does extemporaneous speech even look at? Show them the video from the girl standing in her bedroom last year that sent in her winning speech. So that should be helpful as well if you're just trying to figure out what some of these events are and what they even look like tech problem solving, the winning. It was a different prompt, but it was a basketball. They had to get as high off the table as they could. So the videos of that are in here as well. Drones, you'll see what the winning autonomous drone and the winning manual control for state look like. So that should come in handy as well, and just show your students, hey, this is what a good submission looked like from last year. Anything else from anybody? Well, we are, Andy and I, Friday will be at EKU running that region, and then we turn around Wednesday, we run the Louisville region, but we are always available, phone, text, email. If we don't hear immediately back from us, that's probably why, but we can definitely get back in touch as soon as possible as things pop up and you're starting to think about things. Do keep in mind that the registration for regional ends on the, what did I say, the 4th?
4th.
Yep. So make sure you get all your kids, and that means, yeah, the 4th at midnight. So at 11:59 Eastern time, the registration system closes itself, and then you'll need to start focusing on any early submissions that you may have, which are then due on the 9th. Oh, one more thing. If you're bringing a chaperone or another advisor, you do need to register them, just so we have a head count, like I said, for pizza, and we'll have name tags so everybody knows who everybody is. That's something that Hazard wants to know in case something happens. They can identify students in schools. So if you're coming, obviously you're going to be an advisor. If you have a co-advisor, they're an advisor. If you have parents coming or a principal or counselor, just register them as a chaperone so we have record of them coming. And then like I said, students just register every kid, and then the ones that are competing pick their events. If they're not competing, then they're just coming just to have fun for the day. I'm going to stop the